A very good morning to all of you, and welcome to our fourth digital lecture, which is also a fourth policy talks that are a series of debates and discussions with EuroCommerce members and stakeholders. And in our digital lecture, which we feature on an annual basis now for the last 4 years, we are putting forward one of our digital champions, and that means a retail company that or wholesale company that has embarked on a digital journey and a transformation of digital transformation journey. And today we have among ourselves we have bol.com, and bol.com is maybe not all well known all over Europe, but it's certainly a very fantastic phenomenon in the Netherlands and in Belgium. The company was created about 20 years ago, created in 1999, and since then has grown in a fantastic way, serving more than 7 million customers. So if you think about the population of the Netherlands and Flemish-speaking Belgium, that's about 1 in 3 people in the region that is a bol.com customers, and the journey is not stopping there. Bol.com is now also embarking in Brussels and on French-speaking part of Belgium. The company was acquired in 2012 by Ahold, at the time now Ahold Delhaize, and of course that acquisition has undoubtedly enabled the company to grow further, and the company has about now close to 2,000 people, and is really a very interesting model to learn how in this day and age where we see the domination of the e-commerce by giants from America and China, to see also the growth of a European player. And we have no less than its CEO, Huub Vermeulen, who has been CEO of the company since 2017, but has been with the company almost since the beginning, since starting in 2001, has occupied a number of functions there in logistics, in customer services, in financial operations, product and content. And we're delighted to have you, Huub, to join us to hear your story about your companies, and as usual, we'll take you the story. You'll take us through the journey that you've been on for maybe 15-20 minutes, and then we'll have the opportunity to have a discussion with you, and also with a question from the audience. We have about 150 people joined us online, so warm welcome to all of you, and you have the opportunity using Slido to ask your questions that we will engage and discuss with Huub. So without further ado, Huub, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you for your kind introduction, Mr. Verschuren. Indeed, my name is Huub Vermeulen, and I want to tell you something about bol.com and the journey we've been on, and actually the road ahead that we see for ourselves and for e-commerce in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Europe altogether. Indeed, bol.com started in the late 19th of the last century, founded by a company called Bertelsmann, and it initially was really a European initiative. The idea was to bring bol.com live in 24 countries, mainly in Europe, as an online bookstore. And to make a not too long story even shorter, only a few years after they started this endeavor, they decided to shut it down. The internet bubble burst, and there was not enough trust and belief in e-commerce anymore. So they stopped all 24 countries except for one, and that was, of course, the Netherlands. And we had the opportunity to be acquired by private equity companies. And ever since, we've been in the hands of private equity companies until 2012, when we were acquired by Ahold Delhaize, and since then and until today, we are owned by Ahold Delhaize. Starting out as an online bookstore, but we're not that anymore. We're now a store that buys virtually any non-food product that you can think about. We sell more than 30 million products. And we don't do it as just a store anymore. We do it together with 39,000 local entrepreneurs. And as been said, we have quite a big brand awareness both in Belgium and in Netherlands, and we serve almost 50% of the population as active customers. If you look at our growth, then you can see that our growth accelerates after 2012, and it's partially due to the fact that we were acquired by Ahold Delhaize, but that gave us a push to make the decision to be a store that sells virtually anything in non-food. Before that, we were very gradually building out our assortment, and we wanted to make a push because we saw there was a market for buying virtually anything non-food online. But in order to do that, we thought, well, we can't do it ourselves. We can't keep hiring purchasers. We can't keep filling up our warehouses. There must be a better way. And the better way was that we ask other retailers, other entrepreneurs in the Netherlands and in Belgium to help us build this store. And as you can see in this graph, the dark bars there, that's the sales that our partners are doing today. And in fact, 2019 was an important year because in 2019, as you can see, the sales of our partners surpasses the sales of the stuff that we still buy ourselves. And this year, 2020, we expect that around 60% of every euro spent on bol.com is spent on our partners. And we expect that to grow. So for us, we made a very clear decision that we're no longer just a retailer, we're a platform now. And our line, our mission statement is together we change retail to make everyday life easier, because we think retail is still in change and still in transformation, and we don't want to follow that transformation. We want to drive that transformation. And we don't want to do it alone. We want to do it together with more than 2,000 people here in Utrecht, but also with more than 39,000 entrepreneurs now, and hopefully more soon. And that's why together is such an important part of our statement. And of course, the promise of online retail is easy. It's making daily life easier. And it has a great value, especially in these days, of course. If you look at the e-commerce market today, it's all about Corona. If you talk about your markets, you have to talk about Corona. So we have to. And Corona, just like other iconic events, has a huge impact on society. Just like the fall of the wall at the time and the financial crisis. And what happens in these crises, and we all remember when it was, we all remember what it was about. And when these things happen, we always think that this is the point where we structurally are going to change our behavior. And if you look back then, a lot of us changed in Eastern Europe, but I as a customer, the customers in the Benelux, they didn't change their behavior. And the same thing happened after the financial crisis. So what about this crisis? What about the Corona crisis? Well, I think that the Corona crisis will change structural the behavior of people in the Belgium and Netherlands, and actually in Europe, and I think worldwide. Because behavioral change, and that's something that we actually see on our website, but it's also scientifically proven, behavior change occurs when people are forced to show a different behavior for a longer period of time. And since stores are, if you talk about Belgium, sometimes completely closed. If you talk about Netherlands, people are reluctant to go into these stores. So if we don't go into stores anymore, and we buy more online, and we do it 1, 2, 3 times, or if we already bought online and we spend more online, that what happens is that this behavior gets part of your system, it gets parts of your habits. So I would expect, and we would expect, that this is going to last. And if you look at these graphs, and the graph on the left shows, the dotted line is very simple. That's the growth of online retail and here in the Netherlands. And I think you can draw this graph maybe with some different numbers for any market in Europe. And what you see is a gradual transformation from offline to online buying. The revolution was in 2001 when everybody was really scared, do I want to stay in or step out? The revolution is behind us. It's an evolution now. It's been an evolution for years. It's a gradual change from buying offline to online because changing behavior takes time, unless there's a special event. And Corona is a special event. So what we think is that the step up that you see today in buying online, what you see in the solid graph, that step up will remain. And after that, we'll have the same transformation coming back again. So our expectation is that after the crisis is over, and let's all hope that somewhere by the middle of next year, customer will partially return to the stores, but the shift from offline to online will have accelerated consistently. So we actually skipped 1, 2, maybe 3 years in the shift from offline to online. And at the same time, we see short-term effects, especially in the Netherlands. I saw this happening in Germany as well, not so much in Belgium where the stores are closed. But if you look at non-food spending, then because there are no bars to go to, there are no parties to celebrate, there's little travel to do, people spend their money otherwise. They spend it on non-food stuff, our stuff, the stuff that we sell. But that I think, electronics, DIY is really going fast, and of course services are going down. But I would think that once everything opens up again and we can start traveling again, we can go to restaurants and bars again, that spend will decrease and go even to a lower level than it was before 2020. So that's kind of a mixed market that we'll see after the COVID crisis. What I expect to see after this COVID crisis is more buying online, but in non-food, a market that as a whole market is slightly going down, especially compared to this year, and maybe even compared to the years before. And what does that mean for the physical stores that we have in our area? Well, those physical stores, they did remarkable stuff the recent months. They really sped up the game, and they went online, and they were very creative, and they were very fortunate. And many of them say, well, it's amazing what we're doing. We're now doing the sales that we plan to do in the next coming 3 years, and we're already doing it this year. The problem is, however, that after this crisis, the online market will be bigger, the total market will be smaller, but the incumbent players, like us, and the other players that were already professionally online, they are constantly busy building out their capacity, preparing for growth. So once we get to normal sales levels, this market gets a lot more competitive, because right now, it's a seller's market. There's so much demand, anybody who can supply has a customer. After the crisis, it will be a buyer's market again. And then it's up to being the best store, being most reliable, having the best delivery times, having the best delivery options, and having the best prices. And then it's get really, really challenging for those physical stores. Because the footfall of those stores, they are coming back, but never to the levels that were, and even below the levels that were expected for 2021. And the online market is becoming really competitive. And that's where I think we serve a purpose. That's where a local platform like bol.com can help. Because we can help those local retailers, like we do today, to have an online presence and to still have their customers finding their stores, because being found is one of the main challenges. And they can offer the right payment processes. They can be reliable as they are part of our platform. And on the other end, I think we serve our customers by giving them a consistent overview of the market, and by making sure that what we sell is reliable and is in line with EU safety and quality standards. And the strategy of bol.com is very simple. We want to be what we call the good platform. We want to be good for our customers. And for our customers, what is important that it's reliable, it's convenient, and you have the full assortment. That's what customers come for. Of course, they want to have competitive prices, and we're always there to help. We are truly local. We understand the customers, and they can contact us any channel they like, literally 24 hours a day, literally 7 days a week. And the same goes for our partners, because if you're a platform, you have to service two sides. We also have to serve the entrepreneurs that use our platform. And we want to be good for our partners. And in order to do so, we made a very conscious decision not to develop our own white label products. And you might say, why is that important? That is important because we gather a lot of data from our customers. We know exactly what customers are looking for. And it's very tempting to then say, well, why don't we just try to develop our own products for our customers, put our own label on it, and then compete with the market? It's by definition the best way to make a huge margin, better than the margin that we make today. But we feel that it's not fair. We feel it's not fair that if we use our advantage of the knowledge that we have of what customers are looking for to improve our margins by creating a non-level playing field on our platform. And that's why we have a very clear statement, we won't do that. But what we will do is share all those insights, because of course we know what customers are looking for. We know that we sell a few hundred dustbins, but a dustbin in a given size, in a given color, with given dimensions, that's still not there, and customers are constantly looking for it. And instead of trying to acquire that ourselves or even produce one on our own with our own label on it, we open that up. We constantly supply databases with insights to our sellers, showing them these are the white spots. If you make sure that this product gets on our platform, we know that our customers are waiting for it. And of course, for our customers, for our sellers, the same as for our customers, we are here to help. Guarding quality, making sure your partners deliver on time, making sure they live up to their promises, takes a lot of IT, takes a lot of systems. And we have those systems, but behind those systems there are still people. So if you have a problem, if you have a question, if we take a decision that you don't like, you can call us. And we're there to help just as much as we are there for our customers. And we literally help. Today, to help the Belgian entrepreneurs, the Belgian retailers, because they have difficulties, we opened online webinars. They are open for anybody who's an entrepreneur in Belgium, and we have 6,000 people subscribing to it because we want to help them going online, because we think that we need a healthy environment with local entrepreneurs who are solid, who can survive together on one platform. That's why we're here to help. And last but not least, we want to be good for our society, something that comes deep from within the organization. The people that work with bol.com feel that they have a responsibility. And we have a responsibility. So we decided to be CO2 neutral, to have being CO2 neutral by 2025 as an ambition. We work with local parties in the Netherlands and Belgium, predominantly, and otherwise it's always from the EU, so we can swiftly act on product issues. That's how we try to do this. And I think as a local platform, there is always a possibility to have a sustainable position, because we know exactly who our customers are. We know what they prefer in terms of service, in terms of how we communicate, and even in terms of delivery. And then let's take a step back, because the question is, why do you think platforms are so successful? Why platforms? Why is this the business model that we went for? Well, I think you're now sitting behind your laptop, and normally you use your phone more often, but these days people use their laptop. And if you think about your laptop, you think about your browser, and you have these questions. I'm looking for a meal, looking for a product, looking for a vacation home. What do? How often do you really type www.something. I don't know. How often do you do it? Or do you just choose one of those 8 or 10 boxes that your browser is already showing? And those boxes are the things that you always visit. There are 1.8 billion, this is an actual number coming from some kind of counter. There are 1.8 billion websites. And we return to those 8 or 10 websites over and over again. That's why platforms work, because they organize an abundance of supply. That's why platforms are important. Well, this is very much a sending mission, and now I really want you to think about something. So let's make it, it's not really interactive, at least I want you to put your brain to work. And in order to do so, I have a very simple question. The simple question is, how many elephants live in Africa? And I think the first question in your mind is, why are you asking? Just try to answer this question. How many elephants live in Africa? Well, to be honest, I don't know. And for me, this question is not about the elephants. For me, this question is about what happened in your mind. And I think that many of the people looking now thought about this. They thought about their phone. They thought about Google. Because Google is the answer to all questions. If you sit behind your laptop, 88% of all questions go through Google. The mobile, that's moving way faster, and in Corona, it's side of cliff slowing down, but it will be speed up again after Corona. On mobile, 98% of all questions go to Google. Google owns this market. Google is the market. And that's nice. I mean, I use it all the time. It's really convenient, and it really answers all my questions. I'm sure when I type in how many elephants are living in Africa, 2 clicks and I have it. So it's very useful. But we also are very dependable on it. I don't think there's many sites, and I'm not only talking about e-commerce, I don't think there's many sites who have not at least 50% of their traffic coming through this box. And that's why all these sites are optimizing. There are 70,000 e-commerce websites in the Netherlands alone. And each of those owners of these websites have at least someone who spends some hours, and often multiple people, optimizing their data, their systems, just for Google. So they have 70,000 people working for them just in the e-commerce space. That's scale. And you cannot beat it. And that's not a problem in itself, because it helps. It helps us organize the internet. It makes us findable. It makes my competitors findable. It opens the market. But it becomes a problem when Google says, well, I have all these questions about booking hotels, and I can send them to somebody who can arrange the booking, but why don't I just make the collection? And why don't we just make the booking for the hotel? If everybody's searching for products, why don't we just be the store? Why wouldn't we make a Google store where we have checkout and it's one step less for the customer? It's nice for the customer. And indeed, it's nice for the customer. But it hampers competition. Because if Google is showing the way to the best store, and they are the store, it's not very likely that people will find us just as easy as they find us today. And even if they make a solid distribution that everybody gets a percentage of the traffic, then still they have a huge advantage, because for the simple reason that we have to pay for Google, and Google itself doesn't have to pay for Google because they are Google. And that's a problem. That's a problem, because I think open competition helps to be the best platform for companies. Platforms retailers, they need open competition. And you might think, well, for the customer, it's always nice. And that's right. These companies like Google, they really have a strong focus on the customer. So it takes a while before it gets annoying for the customer. But in the end, it not only hits the sellers, it will also hit the customer. And give me one clear example out of our own experience where that's already happening. And that's this one. It's not about the book, although it's an interesting title. But this is just a random book, an ebook that you can buy on bol.com. And this is actually a screenshot from our app. And if you look at the screenshot, and many of you won't speak Dutch, so you won't have noticed that in the blue bar, it doesn't say, go to the shopping basket. It says, put on your wish list. And the small print above it says, you cannot buy ebooks in the app. So why would we do this? We sell anything on the app, but we don't sell ebooks on the app. And the reason is simple. This is an iPhone. I got an iPhone. It's a great phone. And it's very consistent because there's a very good app store on it. But the app store is owned by Apple. And Apple has a simple rule. If you sell digital products on your apps through the app store, you have to give me 30% of what you sell. 30% of your turnover goes to Apple. And I can charge my customers 30% of $8.99 extra just because they use their phone. So, and the customer would never understand because the app store is for free for them. And I can't afford it. So what we do now is we put it on the wish list. You have to go to the www website. Then you can buy it, and then you go back. This is not something that works for the customer. It doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for the customer. And why is Apple asking 30%? Because they can. They could also ask 50%. They could ask 60%. They could ask 5%. They don't care. Because who's going to compete? Almost 50% of the customers own an iPhone. They love it. They get their apps from the app store. They have to. And we have to buy 30%, pay 30%. That's how these third markets look like. So I think platforms do have a future. I think platforms like the App Store, like our platform, maybe even like search, they have a future as long as there is a competitive market. Because in a competitive market, you will compete on both sides. You will not only compete for the customer, you will always also compete for the seller. And that gives the seller also an opportunity to choose. And the seller thinks 30% is too much, they go to a platform that's cheaper. And that helps the customer in the end, because somebody has to pay for it. So, in a working market, there is place for a local platform like bol.com. We really are convinced that there is a place. And we think that the future of e-commerce is bright for all European companies if we dare to work together. Because you cannot compete with the biggest players in the world by going on your own. You won't find the traffic, you won't go to the level of service and convenience for the customers. But if we really dare to work together in local platforms, we have a very strong position in this market. And that's why we always say, together we change retail to make life easier. Thank you very much.
Very much, Huub. Actually, fascinating to hear the journey that you've gone through, and also very clear views about what it will take actually to continue to be competitive and to be successful. So let me first ask you a couple of questions on that, and particularly on some of the last statement you've made. Looking at the example of Google, for example, I mean, do you believe that actually, the search function, for example, that Google provides and has indeed a monopoly, as you, according to your numbers, I mean, does this need to be separated from the other activities, so that, in other words, I mean, the search function should almost becoming a public service?
Something like that would be fair, because we are totally used to it that if you are the ones who put all the copper wires in the ground, it doesn't make sense to put more copper wire in the ground than just the wire that goes to your home. But then it's not logical that you are the one who is selling the phone line or selling the energy. We made a clear differentiation between the one who is carrying the traffic and the one who's selling the traffic. And it would be only logical to make the differentiation. And I think it wouldn't harm their business model, but it would make it a lot clearer for the people who work on this platform.
Okay, let me I mean, I'm sure we're going to come back to the question on saying, working together. I think there are some questions from the viewers, but I'll call on my colleague Ilya Bruggeman in a minute to do that. Before we do that, I want to question you also on the issue of responsibility towards societies and customers, which is indeed a very interesting slide. And you have 30,000 39,000 partners, if I understood the numbers correctly. Where are all those partners? You said that are they all in Belgium, the Netherlands, and the EU, or we are facing with huge issues of unlevel playing fields with platforms, and you as a Dutch one, there is a huge share of that is coming through the port of Rotterdam into Dutch consumers. The same in Scandinavia, but all over Europe. There is currently discussions on the review of the e-commerce directive, of the general product safety directive. What do you do in terms of responsibility for those partners, where you have where does your responsibility and liability starts and stops versus those of your suppliers? What steps do you undertake to ensure that what lands on in the consumer's sort of mailbox and has not been touched by any bol.com persons, or has not gone through your warehouses, but is basically coming from a third party? I mean, are these third party also? How do you ensure full compliance with EU legislation on? And this goes on product safety. It goes, of course, also on issues of paying VAT and things like that. Can you elaborate a little bit on those very?
The most important thing that we do is that we make sure that we are dealing with local entrepreneurs. We are dealing with legal entities, legal companies in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and if not there, and it's a very small portion that's not seated there, then at least in the European space. Because if we are for sure, and we know who we deal with, and we know that this is a legitimate company, then we know that's still where the responsibility is, and they will take responsibility because they have to be in accordance with the local laws, and I think that's only fair enough. And what we should do then is verify that these are valid companies and take action when we find out that these companies are misusing their platform. And of course, we signed a safety pledge, but we go even a few steps further. We work very closely together with local authorities. In Holland, that's called the Nederlandse Voedsel- en Warenautoriteit. And we have very short communication lines. And whenever they see issues with problems, with products that we also sell or that we just sell, then we will immediately follow a notice and takedown rule, take these products away and help the authorities to solve this problem. And of course, the seller will be removed from the platform. And that's what we need to do. We need to respond to everything that we hear and see, and we try to filter as much as we can before we even get it on the platform. But in the end, the platform is open, and the platform is open to entrepreneurs who have their own freedom to operate, but they also have their own responsibility. The only thing that we may have to make sure of is that these are entrepreneurs that can be called to action whenever they need. That they are not entities that outside of the European space where nobody really has any ruling. So I think that's really important.
As a matter of corporate policy, you don't take any stuff from China or from a Chinese manufacturer? Or...
No, yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of stuff that we buy comes from Chinese manufacturers, and even if it has an American brand label on it, it still comes from American manufacturers. So there's nothing of Chinese manufacturers. There's nothing in the basis wrong with Chinese manufacturers. What is wrong, if there's no local unit, entity that looks at this product and says, okay, I've tested this, I've seen it, this is in compliance with Dutch of European rules and regulations, so I will bring it to the market. And if you bring it to the market, you are responsible for taking the right measures. Because there's Chinese production is big, and it is in every brand, and it's in every market. That's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that you need somebody local who understands the product and who can take the responsibility for that product.
So there is always a European third-party vendors in between.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, great. Maybe one last question from my side. The European single market. How do you see that? Of course, you're originally a Dutch companies. You've come into Belgium, so there was no no sort of immediate language barriers. Although I think there's probably more difference.
Oh, there's differences.
Exactly, there's probably more difference between the Netherlands and France as what meets the eye. And as I'm sure Albert Heijn has found out as well. But I think it's how do you see opportunities, but also challenges in going to other markets beyond? I mean, we're all saying there is a single market, close to 500 million customers. Other than language barriers, can you tell us a little bit about opportunities for you, but also challenges?
there is a single market, and it's, to some extent it works. So you could easily buy stuff in Europe, and you're free to maneuver there. So that works. But if you go to consumers, it's not as single as you think it is. If we only look at the difference in the rules around products between the Netherlands and Belgium, like the rules around batteries, about copyright type of products, about paper waste, and there's so much different little tiny local rules that you have to adhere to, that it's difficult to really speak about a local, an open market, especially if you're consumer facing. So that's difficult. And the same goes with the VAT regulations. They're different in every country. And the law now requires that we, in detail, every product has the right VAT. And with 25 million products, that's challenging. And it's not the same for whichever country. So that is a burden, especially if you're consumer facing. If you go B2B, it feels a bit easier.
I mean, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. There's this thing called the one-stop shop with the VAT that will come into force in not in January, but unfortunately, but it's been a bit delayed because of COVID in July next year. So I think there are opportunities there to, considerable simplification and also avoiding that, people don't pay the VAT under the threshold. So all of that is moving towards the better. Probably a little bit too slow to our taste and to your taste as well.
Yeah, for now we see that having these thresholds taken away, for us we took the decision that's difficult to now ship to the countries where we only have a few customers, which are often expats from the Netherlands and Belgium. Because if you're not below the threshold, you have to pay local taxes, and it's a huge amount of administration to figure out what tax belongs to which product. So for the short term, it's not the best solution for us, but I'm not the expert in this field, so I don't want to say too much about the details of the new regulation.
Thank you. Let me call on my colleague Ilja Bruggeman, who's the head of digital and consumer policy at EuroCommerce. Also happens to be Dutch, so it's but I think we've been working on European. So what sort of questions do we get from our viewers, Ilja?
Well, good morning, and I'm very happy to be also hosting a Dutch company in this case, obviously. But I think some questions are also linked to what we discussed maybe earlier on what type of maybe barriers you have as a company to be active at the European scale. And I think one is linked to the issue of in Brussels terms they call it geo-blocking. But maybe to translate it for you is like, what's stopping you to actually serve consumers in other EU countries than only the markets where you are active now?
I think it has partially to do with that Europe isn't just one space as it is as other states are. If you look at the United States, it's just a single market by definition. But it's not just about legislation, it's about building up a brand name. Because if you want to be a platform in this market, you have to really conquer this market and get into the hearts of mind of these customers. And the investments that you need to do to build up skill in these companies is huge. And we've looked at it over and over again. Should we go to Germany? Should we go to France? But we always found out it's yes, there is rules and regulations I could talk about. But if I'm honest, the biggest problem still is that you have to conquer this market, and it's a vast investment to do that. It will take away our attention from our local Dutch and Belgian market. And there's so much opportunities that we still have to do the best thing there. That every time we found out that we can spend €1 on either trying to conquer a new market or do something better for our current markets, our current customers, our current sellers, we stick to our current markets and sellers. And maybe in time, but so far, we just keep focusing where we are.
All right, thank you. Maybe to add on that, there's also a question on, because you already touched on this, right? Retail is still in transition, so, and actually the like you said, the Corona crisis, it's actually accelerating consumers going online. But actually, in 2012, Ahold Delhaize was still a very physical brick and mortar retailer, right? And since then, you've been, I guess, integrating both different business models. So how do you see that going ahead? Do you think that in the future there will be some kind of still be the separate bol.com brand and the separate stores, or will there be a more integrated business model?
Yeah, You see, a lot of stuff has happened that you don't see. I mean, we learn a lot from each other. We learn a lot from a retailer with a huge history, and they learned a lot from us in terms of having a digital company on their own. So that's one of the important things that customers don't see, but that is really has value. And the other thing is that we do a lot of things together. If you order your parcel in the Netherlands before 2 o'clock, you can pick it up after 5 o'clock at Ahold Delhaize or at Delhaize. So that's kind of nice services. And we do some marketing stuff together. We had a Sinterklaas book, which is really something local. And you can pick it up at Ahold Delhaize, you can pick it up at Delhaize. So you can make the connection between the brands. And I think we can do a lot more to make the connection between those brands. But I don't think that we will merge the brands, because these brands have been built up into a very clear awareness in the hearts and minds of our customers. And Delhaize, Ahold Delhaize, they're food. They know all about food. They are tasty brands. And we're a non-food brand. We know not a lot of products, we can deliver fast, and we have a total different perception with the customers. But I think you can even better connect those brands than we do today. And we're very much working on that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Because indeed, I think the answer one is food and the other is non-food, and they are very different businesses. And also in the food, it's very much supermarkets. I mean, there's no hypermarkets in Albert Heijn or in Delhaize. But there is this thing called, I mean, Delhaize has online, and you have also Ahold.nl. That is very much the online grocery things. I mean, do you see nexus and interaction there? And can you tell a little bit more how you learn from each other on in that front?
Yeah, as I said, in terms of technology and just general knowledge on how this business works, we learn a lot from each other. We operate in different markets, and the target markets of food and non-food, but we learn a lot from each other. And when we try to experiment with voice, we have the teams meeting up. When we experiment with online advertising, we have teams meeting up. So we do a lot of back-end connecting. In the front end, once again, I don't think those brands will eventually come together, but you can make better connections. That's where we are. And I think that our sister brands, Ahold Delhaize and Delhaize, they made huge steps forward in bringing food online. That's really valuable. And as we grow more mature, I think there are more and more opportunities to learn together and to build a common proposition around these two brands. And we're working on that, but I'm not going to tell you what.
Okay, but because there is from a viewer a very specific question. Do you combine customer data from Ahold.nl of bol.com?
No, there's the law, so we don't. We didn't ask our customers if we are allowed to combine it, so we don't combine it. We build up separate databases, and you know the law. And I think trust in online retailing, in any form of business, but especially in online retailing, trust is the most important thing to have. People should be able to trust us in any sense, be it about products, but also about data. So that's why we're very consistent and very clear where we use it and where we don't use it. So we don't have the consent, so we don't use it. But we use insights. You can use insights. You can use what you learn from how customers behave, like I shared. And that's valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to maybe come back to the earlier point on let's say the digital transition or the move towards omni-channel, because I think you described, there are some operational issues to that matter. But do you also see, maybe from a policy or legislative perspective, that there are some barriers or that actually makes it more difficult to makes the digital transition more difficult for you, or could there maybe be more attention to certain issues from legislators than there is now?
No, I think the most important thing that I believe in open markets. I think markets should be working. And I think the most important thing to have here is make sure that the markets work, that they function. And digital markets tend to be very concentrating on one point, which is fair, which is logically, because it's a hyper-scalable service that you are providing. I always learned that if you want to get rich with a low opportunity of getting rich, you have to be hyper-scalable. So you have to write a book. Because once you've written the book, you've done all the work, and if it sells, you get really rich. There's a small chance, but and digital business is like that. You build it once, and you can use it over and over again. The incremental costs are relatively low. But it also means that once you get the skill, you can build more than anybody else. And that's valuable because all these features, they have value and they mean something for customers, but it's also kind of dangerous because in the end, you might see that all possibilities to excel concentrate on one point. So I think the biggest challenge that we have, and I don't have all the answers, but I see the challenge, is that these hyper-scalable businesses, they tend to go to one point only, and then we don't have an open market anymore. Then we don't have a competitive market anymore. And that's exactly why I think where I think we need rules and regulations to make sure that that still works. And if the open market works, then there's more opportunities for everybody to join and to be part of it. But that's the most important thing.
We get one specific, we talk about competitiveness, etc. Some people are interested. So we get a question from Italy saying that how much do you charge your merchant partners for your services in average? I mean, is that also, and how does that compare with the other major platforms? And
depends on what you sell. So it's not one price for everything, but it's somewhere between 12 and 15% of their turnover is what we get. And of course, we do something for that. We have a customer service, we do payment processing, we do a lot of marketing, and the most important thing that you get from us is traffic. You buy traffic, and in any business, traffic costs money. Where if you're in a shopping street, the rents are kind of high because people walk in that street. So that's what we charge. And if you look at those charges, then you can see the market working. Because charges that we have are comparative. You can compare them with other platforms, and there are alternatives. And as long as there are alternatives, there's a working market also for platforms. So I think that really helps to find a balance between what's good for the customer, what's good for the merchant, and still having a company in between that makes a fair profit on it.
We've got a question from our friends from the Soaps and Detergents Associations asking, can you expand a little bit on your plans to achieve CO2 neutrality by 2025 in terms of what you do there?
Yeah, it's a very ambitious goal. And sometimes people say, well, are you sure you can meet 2025? And I always say, I think we can, but it's really difficult. And that's why you have to have a target that's not that far away. If we would say 2040, we won't change anything we do today because I don't know what happens in 2040, but 25 makes us a change. So what we've done already with the warehouses that we still have on our own, that we built, they're all CO2 neutral now. We do a lot in our packaging and make sure we reduce packaging and get CO2 neutral. And we work with our last mile companies to move to electric or bicycle delivery, and that's moving up fast. So it's something that we do on the things that we literally own, like our warehouses and our buildings, and we've already made the steps there because we built them all new, and that really helps, of course, to make that step easily. And there's a lot of legacy in the last mile, but we work with the last mile companies and try to figure out how we can move as fast as we can to see CO2 neutrality there as well. And we prefer CO2 neutral solutions, like pickup points in your local grocery stores, for instance, is a great way of reducing CO2 impact because it's one trip and you get the product, and it has for that trip no additional CO2 impact. So that's how we do it. And it's ambitious, but you need to be ambitious if you want to achieve something. You need to have a goal that says, if I don't do it today, we're too late. So we're moving fast, and I think we will get there.
So you're getting independent verification on those targets and annual progress reports?
Yeah, we do a lot of verification on ourselves, and we ask companies to look at that. It's not a formal thing; it's something that we organize ourselves. But we do validate how far we are. We do report what our progress is in reducing CO2 impact. And the Dutch Online Association as well, they build a tool in which you can calculate what the CO2 impact of a delivery is. And these tools help a lot. They provide insight to the customers and to us.
Yeah, and perhaps it's a good way to do a bit of advertising, I think, or friends, the European test wrinkle, so the e-commerce Europe or friends have done a report on sustainability and e-commerce that I think I recommend people to have a look at.
And online buying and selling has it in itself that it has a lower CO2 footprint by definition than store buying, as long as you take the right steps, as long as you take the right measures and have the right facilities for your customers in place. So it's also a matter of awareness and setting goals. And the interesting thing is that at a company like bol.com, there's a lot of millennials, young people working with us. And it's not only me, it's 2,000 people driving this change. They want to work for a company that does the right thing. And this is one of the things that you need to do the right thing.
Ilya, perhaps staying on sustainability, we could take maybe the question from our friends from EuroCommerce. I think they've related to sustainability issue in third countries.
Yeah, we could. Actually, I was thinking in the direction that we see now in Europe there are a number of initiatives being developed by the European Commission towards a more sustainable single market, but also towards more sustainable products. And do you think, are you planning to play a role as a platform also in this green transition? So not only CO2, but also looking at the products you sell, or do you think there's a role to play for online platforms in general?
Yeah, there is a role to play. Although I have to say that the best way to save the environment is to close your store, because consumption in itself has an impact. And if we close the store, we have no position anymore. So there's always a balance between how you survive and how you can add value. But we do add value. What we've done is we've taken up a lot of, how do you call them, labels, certified labels, independent labels, that tell you that this product is a green product or is a sustainable produced product. And we incorporate those labels in our web store. So we have a few thousand products now that have these labels. And if you look for toys, you can see that this toy has a green certification on it. So there's a lot of these certification and independent certifiers that look at the impact of products or the way these products are produced. And we really try to embrace those labels, put them next to the products, but also allow customers to navigate on those labels. So you can at least have the choice to do responsible buying. If we skip everything just like that and only go for the stuff with the labels, we have no position. But if we have the choice, give the customers the insight and the choice to do responsible buying, we at least support the change and we drive the change to more responsible products by showing alternatives for the less responsible products.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm actually now I'm looking to the questions we have on Slido, and one thing that seems to pop up at the top is I think this is what we call the unfair competition from third countries, where we look at products sold online. And I think one of the questions is how can you mitigate this type of, let's say, unfair competition from third countries as bol.com? How can you deal with that?
What do you mean exactly with third countries?
Well, so from outside the EU. So basically, we see there are a number of platforms from outside the EU or traders that sell to European consumers unsafe products, which obviously are cheaper, and they don't take into account the EU rules and regulations. And how can you deal with that type of competition?
Yeah, it's difficult, and it's the only thing we can do is solve it by showing our customers that we have better products, by just being a better seller. But it would indeed help if this type of unfair competition gets ruled. I mean, it seems to be there are rules, but at least something has changed. There used to be a situation where these goods came to the market without even paying VAT on them, and they even had a subsidized transport in the last mile. Now that's going away. That helps a lot. And as far as goes stopping those products, that's not up to us. It's not up to us to rule the companies around us. The only thing we can do is take our responsibility. And our responsibility is that, yes, we are a platform, so we are not the ones who are importing these products. We are not the ones who are actually selling these products. We are the ones who are trying to provide insight in an abundance of supply for our customers, and then make sure it works, and then make sure they get the support when things go wrong, and act on issues. And in order to be able to act on issues, the only thing that we can do is make sure we work with European companies, and they have to live by the rules. and they can be called upon when they don't. So, and then the next step is that we help the authorities whenever they think there's something wrong to take these products down and to take actions to the companies that do this, because it might as well be a European company that's just importing it without looking at the rules and regulations. The other thing is, of course, that we have to tell our sellers what the rules and regulations are, and we have a lot of communication with our sellers. We train them in anything. We have webinars on various subjects, and we're there to help. So not only on tax rules and regulations, which can be complex if you're in the Netherlands and you ship to Belgium, or the other way around. Not only about how do you can make more sales, but also what you can and cannot do in the market. We really try to educate our sellers. And once again, it's very important that at least we make sure that we work with European sellers, because that's the way that we can keep this platform clear. The other platforms, it's not up to me to, it is difficult competition. The good thing is that some of the platforms have such a low quality of their products that they are being recognized as low quality platforms. And the brand names have a really strong notation with their customers that it takes long, it usually doesn't work, and you can't return it. So that helps, because you can set yourself apart on quality. The quality is recognized by your customers, but the impact is still there. It's still stuff that comes from far away, travels all the way, 4 or 5 euros, doesn't work, you can't return it, you throw it away. It's waste. It's waste by definition. And yes, it's unfair competition, but I think we can compete on the quality that we show.
Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, yeah, the European Commission came up with a proposed sort of data governance act, which aims to at least set the first steps in how should Europe handle the issues of data, data sharing, of course, because it is very important in when you deal with supply chains that there is opportunities to share the data. There's also big discussions on some sort of strategic autonomy. The German government and the French government are working together on this Gaia X. The European Commission support a little bit more European autonomy about where the data is being hosted. Of course, we do know that in terms of cloud computing, Europe is way behind and doesn't have enough capacity to serve companies like yours. So I think it's very much primarily American companies, to some extent growing Chinese companies that provide that capacity. How do you see that? I mean, where do you, I don't know if you can disclose where you host your data, who are you using as a provider? Do you believe that, that makes sense to say all the data needs to be in Europe? Or, of course, in its there's an issue of strategic autonomy. There's also issues around privacy. I mean, it is becoming a huge geopolitical issue. Where do you stand and what do you do?
I think it's a very good subject to look at from a ruling and a government perspective, because it is indeed true. We use American providers to store our data. And you mentioned the reason why. There's little or no European alternatives. They store it in Europe, so that should help us with the law, but it's still kind of uncertain because you cannot physically see where it's being stored. But by definition, it's stored in Europe. And I think it's really fair to think about it. And I think as Europe, we should really figure out how can we turn this cycle the other way around. Again, it's a skill cycle. Once you've reached a certain level of skill, it's very hard to compete because your initial costs are so high that you never get to the speed and the skill that others are. And maybe that's something that companies cannot do. But we do need, it would be really help us, it will help European entrepreneurs if we get these capabilities here on our soil, on our ground, because you never know how politics change, and you never know how people look differently at data from one day to another. And data is very sensitive, and it's very, people don't really understand about data, because sharing data is not always the solution, for instance. There's a lot of people who say, well, there's a platform, you have to share data, but if I share your data, you get raw data that has no value at all. But we should share insights, because what we learn we can share, and that helps us also because it's anonymized. At the same time, it wouldn't be wise if data from hospitals, if data from stores like us, if data from banks is stored offshore, is handled by offshore companies. You don't want that. So But you're right. For the time being, we just depend on the best, and the best, unfortunately, are not in Europe. And if you want to compete, we have to work with the best.
Thank you. I think we probably have time for one last question, Ilya, or one or two short questions.
Yeah, we actually some of the participants submitted some questions up front about AI, and I think that's a topic we completely did not address. But obviously, it's very important. Also, the Commission, you know, they are working on a legislative proposal, and perhaps maybe you could tell something about how you use AI, how that benefits your customers, maybe your B2C and B2B customers, and what you see are the challenges ahead for you to use that technology in the best way possible.
Yeah. Well, I'm an entrepreneur, so I think in opportunities, and I think there's a huge opportunities in AI and data science. It's not the same, but we often mix them up. But for the techies, it's not the same. But AI, data science, it really creates a lot of value already today. Right now, it's the busiest time of the year. A lot of the forecasting is being done by these systems, both for customer service and for logistics. But it also helps us to organize all the content data that we have. It helps us to look at the behavior of our sellers. If you talk about sellers that show behavior that doesn't help our customers, you can find that if you have the right systems to figure out what typical behavior is. It helps us to find fraud on the payment side. It helps us to organize content better, to improve navigation, to personalize what we sell to our customers. It helps us everywhere to make our store better. It's advanced technology, and I think what we need, the best thing, and that's a personal belief, but my personal belief is that the best investment that any government can ever do in their country is in two simple things: infrastructure and education. And this is education. This is all about education, making sure we have the people who can do this. And then when you have them, make sure you can keep the companies on board that use it. I mean, a company like ours, we have almost 80 to 100 people specialized in this field alone, working in our store, serving our partners, serving our customers. And these people, they spin off to smaller companies once they learned a lot here. So if we build a situation where we can keep the companies that foster this technology alive, and these companies take their responsibility, like Ahold Delhaize did. Ahold Delhaize participates in AirLab. And AirLab is an AI development initiative from the Amsterdam University together with Delft University nowadays, where we really invest in the universities, and they do research for us. So it's a private business corporation that could help. So it's all about making sure that we have build the capabilities in our countries, that we support universities, support schools to develop this knowledge, and then make sure that we provide an environment where companies that actually use this data to the best level, that these companies have an opportunity to be there, to survive. And it's our responsibility as well, but we could need some help to have a fair level playing field. And if that happens, then you build this knowledge. And this knowledge is not only vital for a company like us, it's not only vital for retailers, it's vital for any business. Any business is going to use this technology, whether you like it or not, because it really allows you to have a far better understanding of your business, to optimize your performance towards your customers, to optimize your own processes, to optimize your insights. So it's valuable. And once again, it's about investing as a company. It's about making sure that the companies that do invest have an opportunity to compete. And it's about investing a lot in education, because education is the basis of I think, a healthy economy in this field.
Well, unfortunately, the hour is up already. I think it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation with you, Huub, and really wanted to thank you wholeheartedly, because we've gained a lot of insights. I mean, as you said, data is important, but insights is even more important. And we really need people like you to come into the discussions also with very clear views in terms of because those help us to sharpen our own positions towards the EU institutions. So please stay engaged. I mean, we're very pleased that to have you, bol.com, and of course Ahold Delhaize behind it, very actively engaged in EuroCommerce to sharpen our overall positions, and on the digital issues, they are very, very important. You've definitely showed us what you're doing to be indeed a good platform, as you said, because this is very much in line with also the the core values where the European Union stands for. I mean, they want to have a very human-centric, and therefore the trust element is very important. And as we all know, because e-commerce is also distance selling in a way. Keeping and maintaining that trust is absolutely fundamental, like in all commerce operation, but certainly even more so in e-commerce, where you don't have a physical interaction with the seller. So I think it's been a lot of very good inspiration that and good ideas that we will factor into making sure the EU here's some of the message that you've had on issues on competition, on issues of indeed data governance. Those are very important. So one topic you've just alluded to in your last remark is indeed education. We haven't had a chance to talk about that. I think probably the subject for a further conversation. Issues indeed of skills and making sure we have the right sort of skills to deal with those businesses. Allow me just to on that front to it's a good segue into a bit of advertising for our next policy talk, which is our conference next week on jobs and skills in the retail and wholesale sector on December 2nd. We have a full conference on these issues on the future of work, and that includes a very important elements on the issues of skills and upskilling and reskilling people. So stay tuned for to all of you for that session next week, Wednesday. So thank you all to you, Huub, again.
Thank you.
Thanks to
Thank you
all
for
our
having me.
viewers. Thanks to Ilya for having been my partner in this discussions in curating the questions for the session, and we look forward to continued cooperation. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.